So how much do you use mathematics, whether it's calculus, algebra, statistics? Uh,
Yeah, so of course, if you start in business, the basics are adding and subtraction, multiplication, division, percentages. And so there's a whole lot of that going on because you got balance sheets and income statements and things like that. And then the next level is probably there's a certain amount of calculus. Well, there's algebra would be next. A lot of algebra type problems where you can calculate to come up with the best answer using algebra. Then as you move along, statistics is huge. I mean, there's statistics in just about everything that you do. There's a lot of work done on risk assessment and understanding what the risks are, and of course that has a lot of statistics and mathematics around that. Then on not as often, but occasionally, there's issues around rate of change. How fast is something changing? So that's where maybe differential equations or something like that might come in. So things are changing. They're changing at what pace, and even sometimes you go to the next level and say at what pace is the change of the change changing. So that's very important. Then again, simulation is huge in business too, because there's a lot of simulations for understanding what the future is going to look like financially, what it's going to look like. There's simulation of the factory floor, and there's the Q theory comes into that quite a bit. So because the computer power is so great these days, everything we're trying to simulate everything before we actually do it, because this idea of engineering something and then trying it, whether it be the layout of a store, the layout of a factory, or a product, we're finding that if you simulate it, you can learn a lot from the simulations by changing variables and changing the way you do things. And then you can also use mathematics to come up with the optimum solution. And so, and then there's a learning process that goes on when you simulate. So you can take what might have taken you 10 or 15 years of learning, and with simulations you can do it in a couple of days. But for that to really be useful, you have to understand the equations behind the simulation. And products, for example, in one of my jobs we designed a 3-inch diaphragm pump, and there was sort of an efficiency level that we had reached that we thought was the best that we could do, but that was through experimentation. Once we were able to do an FEA analysis on it, we were able to get 35% more efficiency out of it just by having a better understanding of what was going on in the pump. And so, but that same thinking that's used on products is now being used on everything. It's used on designing the organization, designing the shop floor. People are using the simulation because through that simulation you can learn, but for it to be meaningful, you have to understand the mathematics behind it. And of course, risk is a huge field. And there's the risk that insurance involves and all the mathematics and things that go along with insurance. But that's just really the start. There's risk assessment done. We call it failure mode effects analysis that are done on just about anything you do nowadays. And by doing those, and that takes a lot of mathematics. There's mathematics of figuring out what the priorities should be, and then there's also mathematics that's used to try to optimize where you put your resources based on the risk that you determine that there is, and how much that risk costs you, and then how much now it's worth to abate that risk. And so risk is a huge field, and of course mathematics when it comes to stock prices and analyzing stocks, that's a whole other field of mathematics that I really